Hello and thank you for watching the Capitol Report on NTD News. I'm your host, Melina Weisskopf, filling in for Steve Lance tonight. Today was the 50th anniversary of the March for Life. It was also their first march since the overturning of Roe versus Wade. NTD's Jason Perry has the story.
Welcome to the 50th March for Life. Thank you for coming.
Jeannie Mancini, the president of March for Life, got the crowd excited.
I want to welcome you to the world's largest, longest running annual human rights demonstration, the March for Life.
This is the organization's first march since Roe versus Wade was overturned. She said there will still be about 700,000 abortions in America this year. Mancini said this year's March for Life theme will be focused on the next steps, one of which is to get more pro-life laws passed at the state level. Then she introduced several guests to speak in front of the crowd, including House Majority Leader Steve Scalise.
Only think about this. A bill that says if a baby's born alive outside the womb, you can't kill the baby and call it abortion. 1 out of 212 Democrats supported that bill. Now that's not America. 70% of Democrats in America think it's wrong to allow that baby to die. Yet up here in Washington, that's how extreme they have gotten.
And former professional football coach Tony Dungy spoke about the Buffalo Bills player who recently survived a cardiac arrest on the field.
We need to pray with the same fervor that we prayed with during that week, because God answers prayer, and He will answer these prayers to save these precious unborn lives as we go forward.
NTD heard from a former Planned Parenthood director, Abby Johnson, who spoke about abortions by pill.
We don't even know what the psychological impact is going to be for these women who take these drugs and see their fully formed babies, floating in a toilet. And they're not going to be ready for that. They're not going to be prepared for that, because everything on the internet tells these women it's just like taking a Tylenol. And they're being lied to. They have no idea what to expect. And then what do? Do they flush their baby down the toilet? Do they pick it up? Do they take it somewhere to bury it? They don't know. They're not going to know.
Since this was the first March for Life since the overturning of Roe versus Wade, some said the atmosphere was more joyful than the previous marches. And their first march was in 1974, 1 year after abortions became legal in the United States. Those who are pro-abortion say women should have the right to make decisions about their own bodies. Jason Perry, NTD News.
And today marks 2 years that the Biden administration has officially occupied the White House. The president touting his accomplishments after breaking silence on classified documents. NTD's Iris Tao has more from the White House.
Today is 2 years since I was sworn in as president.
Marking the second anniversary of his inauguration, Biden touts achievements to nearly 200 mayors invited to the White House.
18 million people were out of work 2 years ago this week. Now the number is under 1.6 million. We're also making the biggest investment ever in climate.
And that's as the White House on Friday sent out a cheat sheet about job growth and cooling inflation, highlighting what it calls the overwhelming popularity of the president's economic agenda. But the Republican National Committee gives a less rosy assessment of Biden's 2 years. Writing on Friday, American workers are seeing their paychecks shrink, and families are paying more for gas and groceries. All this as scrutiny continues to grow over Biden's handling of classified documents. After dodging reporters' questions for a week, Biden on Thursday broke silence on the discovery of the files, but only to say he does not regret not telling the public earlier.
We immediately turned them over to the archives and the Justice Department. We're fully cooperating and looking forward to getting this resolved quickly. I think you're going to find there's nothing there. I have no regrets. I'm following what the lawyers have told me they want me to do. It's exactly what we're doing. There's no there. Thank you.
The White House on Friday would not comment on what he meant.
I'm not going to get into specifics, or I'm not going to go beyond what the president has said.
This weekend, Biden's heading back to his home in Rehoboth Beach, Delaware. When asked if it had anything to do with classified documents being found at his other home in Wilmington, Delaware, the White House says it's not going to comment. Reporting from the White House, Iris Tao, NTD News.
And one aspect about inflation that we don't hear too much about is how the rising cost of diesel contributes to higher costs of goods, which are transported by vehicles using diesel fuel. Now, while the cost of regular gas is roughly where it was last year, sitting at around $3 a gallon, the change in the price of diesel gas is much more noticeable. It's gone up $1 or more since last year. And there are certain policies in place that are causing this. To break this down, we have Joe Trotter, who's an Energy Task Force Director at the American Legislative Exchange Council. All right, Joe, so there's been an obvious spike in diesel prices over the past year or so, which really hasn't eased. And this price increase is more significant than the cost of regular gas. Now, Joe, you have a piece explaining that there are certain policies that have caused this. What are those policies and why have they caused these elevated diesel prices?
So right now, we are not turning out as much gasoline and diesel as we have in the past. But the fact of the matter is there's still demand for it. And that demand has skyrocketed. So that's the long-term implication of reason that we're here. Now, there are a few other things going on as well. One of the things is the move to biofuels and biodiesel in particular. And some refineries, instead of going completely offline, went ahead and changed their refining process to produce biofuels. The problem is that you only get about half as much biodiesel coming out of a refinery at any given time than you do traditional diesel. So between these two items, you're seeing essentially just less supply and increasing demand.
We also see other policies like that, such as the federal tax credits for buying electric vehicles. Now, I want to ask you about some of the long-term implications of these type of incentives. In one of your pieces, you wrote big government energy policies create increasingly bigger government solutions. So what are you referring to there?
So when the government gets involved in any market, it skews it one way or another. And what we're seeing with electric vehicles is this top-down mandate that says we have to go for it. Especially in a lot of states. A lot of states' laws, California in particular, you're seeing these mandates for this to happen. So we're seeing states go ahead and say, you have to put new infrastructure in to charge these vehicles. And there was a big fight in California about who was going to pay for that. And it's just creating a mess out of the market. It's just this top-down meddling that keeps happening time and time again. And every time there is more government meddling, you're seeing just new ways in which the government has to be involved to clean up the mess that it made before.
We know that mainly China dominates the green energy market, and even the rare earth minerals have to be shipped to China for processing. That's what experts have told me, at least. What's your take on where we are currently as far as being able to be self-sufficient when it comes to getting our hands on these materials to transition to renewable energy?
So most of these materials, these rare earth minerals and things like lithium, do exist in the United States. Wyoming, California, Alaska in particular, they all have huge deposits of these critical minerals. The problem is actually getting to them with the regulatory regime we already have. Getting a new mine in place and operational often takes about 10 years from the initial proposal just to get through the regulatory process before they can go ahead and actually break ground. And it just kind of seems that legislators, especially on the left side of the aisle, don't have the stomach to go ahead and say, well, okay, we're willing to work to make this happen. And as a result, we are left relying on China. And when I say relying on China, a lot of these rare earth minerals come out of areas in Africa and even Afghanistan before making its way to China for processing. So in essence, right now, we're relying on the Taliban and China to make our green energy transition happen. And that's just not a winning formula.
Right, and from my understanding, the same environmental groups that are pushing so strong to transition quickly to renewable energies are also the ones that are kind of spearheading the efforts to put regulations in place to prevent us from mining for the minerals that we have here in the U.S.
It's a self-defeating cycle here. In a perfect world, we could just go ahead and teleport these minerals out of the ground. What they want could become a reality, but we live in the real world. Something is going to have to give. What is needed on all of these fronts is regulatory reform, streamlining the process, making sure that, if there are 10 government agencies involved, and that could just be on the federal level and not even including state and local agencies, there's got to be a way to funnel, because a lot of them are looking for the same information, funnel all this information in a standardized way and ensure that the process goes quicker, more efficiently, and it has a real time limit so that things can't just sit there in limbo. And that would be the quickest way to help ensure that this part of our energy infrastructure is just able to flourish in America, homegrown.
Okay, great. Interesting chat. Thank you for your time, Joe. We appreciate you.
Thank you very much.
Former President Trump and his lawyer are fined almost $1 million. The sanctions are part of a judgment on Trump's lawsuit against Hillary Clinton and 30 other individuals over the Russiagate scandal. The defendants are accused of weaving a false narrative that Trump's presidential campaign colluded with Russian actors. The federal judge who ordered the fine against Trump was appointed by former President Bill Clinton. That judge said Trump's lawsuit against Hillary Clinton was frivolous and should have never been brought to court. The fine is to pay the legal costs for all 31 defendants. The Russiagate lawsuit was previously dismissed in September, and Trump has appealed the decision.
Thank you for watching the Capitol Report. If you want to see our full broadcast, check us out at epochtv.com.